Okay, unit standby for tower 315 and 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters, 14300 East Alameda Avenue. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
King 6, we got another person outside shot in the leg of female. I got people running out of the theater that are shot.
Yeah, all of our RPs are saying Theater 9 where Batman was playing. Another RP is saying they're still shooting. 216?
453, I have a party shot here. I need rescue hot.
Somebody is still shooting inside Theater number 9 per an employee.
Get us some damn gas masks for Theater 9. We can't get in it.
We're letting rescue know as well.
69 guys on the east side of block. East side. I need officers on the east side of block it.
Welcome to On the Spot. To my right, my co-host, Steven Thompson. On the Spot is part of the OTS networks. Empowering intelligence is what this is all about. Steve, we had a rough week here.
This is really a rough week. We sit here in the aftermath of what could be considered the deadliest mass killing in recent history. Seems what happens in the opening of The Dark Knight Returns, a Batman movie in Colorado. The suspect named James Egan Holmes,
Joker.
The Joker. Unfortunately, this young man, who's obviously looks like it's a mental illness issue, he decided that he was going to dress up and go into a theater and basically open fire. He supposedly, now this is obviously, we're getting the back and forth between witnesses, that he opened up a canister of some type.
OC
possibly, and then started to open fire. So what happens is, unfortunately, we have a verified 12 people who are dead, possibly over 70 people, 72 injured. Obviously, we now are sitting here in just basically everyone's just mortified. The President of the United States had stopped 2 of his particular campaign functions and to address the country. It's unbelievable. So that's really, we start off today. We had planned the show to talk about national gun violence. And
this is a big problem.
Unbelievable. So in
Dark
this,
Knight is what Batman was all about, and it's definitely a Dark Knight.
It's an interesting metaphor that you don't want to happen, but it brings up a lot of questions about our violence across the country. So here we sit in New York City. In our second half of the show, we're going to talk about a localized gun violence, but really we're going to look to some footage that looks at in Chicago. Mayor Rahm Emanuel is dealing with a massive situation.
Crime
wave. Young people or individuals are on their stoop getting killed by gun violence in the sense of strange bullets and stray bullets and things like that.
Okay, well let me start with Colorado first.
Okay, let's go there.
Young man, 24 years old,
right.
PhD student,
right.
Dropped out because he wanted to.
Right.
He's troubled, but I think his real problem was sensationalism.
Right.
He wanted to be the center of attention while Batman was the center of attention.
Probably.
So he wanted to steal his thunder. And guns is the problem.
All right.
And the states where he had 4 guns. One of them was an AR-15, I believe. He had about 4,000, 6,000 rounds of ammunition.
They say that he bought 6,000 rounds of ammunition.
And the NRA's comment on this, well, if other people had guns, this wouldn't have happened.
Right. Well, unfortunately, it's a constant conversation about the NRA, and they say, well, if other people had a gun, maybe they could take him out. Obviously, anybody you're law enforcement in that particular situation, you probably do not want anybody shooting indiscriminately within a theater. We always talk about the issue as an example of you cry fire in a theater, and what happens is chaos.
Yes.
So we've got the same thing, and you can only imagine with a gunfight, corral, in a theater, a crowded theater. Unfortunately, we're hearing news that a 6-year-old child lost their life.
Yes.
A Navy, enlisted Navyman.
A gentleman, musician from Bed-Stuy got shot.
Right, some New York folk are there. There's a more specific story. A young lady there was an incident in Toronto where there was a shootout, a mass killing, and she was lucky enough to get out of that. Unfortunately, in this case, she was killed.
Well,
this is an unbelievable situation.
The solution is?
Well, we're going to get into deeper situation about gun violence and the idea of What do we need to do to understand whether we should have registration for guns, for people who purchase guns, obviously guns and ammunition? And the idea is that's necessary. Because here's the issue that a lot of people mess up in the idea of having the right to a gun. But do we all have a right to an AK-47?
Here's the difference. A lot of this will never change. Mayor Bloomberg, with all his billions, tried to change it, and he could not.
Right.
So if Bloomberg couldn't change it, nobody else is going to change it. The NRA is very strong.
Right.
The Republicans is going to stand with the NRA, and there's nothing that's ever going to happen. This cannot be a subject.
Right.
For the presidential race, it's not going to be a subject.
It's not going to be an issue?
No, guns. They're not going to talk about it. Obama can't talk about it.
That's interesting.
Obama can't talk about it because when he ran on 08,
right.
that was the problem. They kept telling Obama wants to take your guns away.
Right.
He can never talk about it.
He can't bring that up. So we're going to have to come back on our next section, and we're going to extend this.
We'll be back. We're back. Steven Thompson's here. On the spot. OTS Network. Empower Intelligence.
Empowered Intelligence. We have a very, very powerful segment. It's an extension of the idea of gun violence, national gun violence. Stop and frisk. Because the issue with stop and frisk is that how do we eradicate guns on the street? In New York City, we have an issue.
And New York City is the key to that.
Right, New York City.
Okay.
Obviously, we see it around the country, but now we
I'm going to tell you why I say that.
And we have an extension from the last shows that you had dealt in a situation where we're constantly talking about stop and frisk. In the last week, there's a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
The Commissioner, Raymond Kelly, made a statement. Norm's a big advocate of the idea of, he says basically, quote unquote, he's sick of the silence. Now, he's specifically talking to black, or at least people of color in those communities about, let's clarify what he's saying. He's saying that if, in fact, a young child, 3 years old, 4 years old, children, young people, are getting killed, where are the protests from the community collectively, political or elected officials?
I have a problem with that.
What? He's saying
I said, but he might have, I think he misspoke,
right.
And this is more of a hit at our political people of color.
Okay.
The reality is, we've said it on the spot on numerous occasions.
Right.
Guess what? You don't see them. In Borough Park, if something happened in their community, in
right.
Williamsburg, if something happened in their community, we'll see them.
Right.
In Bed-Stuy, the Bronx, Queens, our elected officials of color, you will not see them. They don't come out.
Around the issue of gun violence and the
violence period in our community.
But obviously the gun violence
they
is
can only
out
come out if the police do something.
So police brutality
exactly.
and issues like that.
They'll come out for that.
So do you think Kelly was right in basically calling out black politicians and, of course, black leadership? That would mean preachers and imams.
Well, we can talk about the preachers,
right?
But the boots on the ground.
He said everybody.
No, but I don't think he meant.
Well, the problem is when you're the commissioner of New York City and you make an incendiary statement you can't make a mistake.
Boots on the ground,
right,
are out there doing their job.
Okay.
He who controls his media tells his story.
That's true.
You'll never see it because we don't control our media. Well, that's why you need to come on the spot.
Well, it's empowered intelligence continually looking at these issues, looking at what's going on. So when Kelly says, listen, these African American or Latino in these communities of the Bronx, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and saying that they are not doing anything on a grassroots level, is he correct?
100%.
Okay.
I asked the question. I have Al Van.
That's your wait.
Okay. I have Al Van on footage on a show we did here in I believe in 06.
Okay.
And I said, Al, if something happens, how can a community reach you?
Right.
And he said, you don't need to reach me. You need to reach the police.
Okay.
No. In other boroughs, Borough Park,
right,
Williamsburg, when something happened in the community, the elected officials is there.
Right.
Our elected officials. This happens so much. They're used to it. They don't do anything. Right. I got a great deal of our elected. Only elected official that I can say we'll see out here is Charles Barron.
Okay.
Charles across lines for some crime. He'll come out there and speak out against it. The other, maybe Ruben Diaz.
Okay.
Everybody else is silent.
All right.
They don't come out. Only time they'll come out, I'll say it again, they're waiting for police brutality to come out.
Yeah, but see, the issue is what a lot of people don't like is how are you going to confuse the issue of stop and frisk? Now, the issue that comes up with stop and frisk is you collect very few guns.
Mm-hmm. We don't disagree with that.
Right.
But I keep getting to the point.
Right.
Let's talk about black on black crime, and there would not be any stop and frisk. The police wouldn't be in our neighborhood. We've asked for the police. Let's be for real.
But that's
when
their
the
job.
shootings, the shootings happen in the housing developments and every place else. What do they say? We want more police presence. It's a price to pay. You can't have it both ways.
But you mistake. It is not both ways. You cannot constitutionally go and stop and frisk people for no reason.
We agree.
That is the issue that Kelly continues, as well as the mayor, as they say, they get in the street, get it twisted. Because let's go back a little bit. If in fact we just came out of a session where we talked about the fact that in Colorado we have an issue where somebody, what they say is he came to bring the noise.
Yes.
Anybody frisk him before he got there?
No.
Okay.
The stop and frisk is not. Stop and frisk is really a New York issue.
I understand that, but here is the issue that comes up. It's not really. They're doing it in Philadelphia also.
Okay, but
they have it in basically urban areas. What we have is a balance between a constitutional right and an invasion of privacy. And here's what we have a problem with. If you consistently take a community and invade them and say, we're going to do this,
that's what you say outwardly.
No, I say
that's what you say outwardly. But guess what?
What?
When you walk down a block and you see 20 of these little kids looking like hoodlums, pants hanging and everything else, do you get that feeling, and talking loud and everything, do you get that feeling that somebody has a gun there?
You can't say that.
Do you? That's not the question I asked you.
Here's the
That's
issue.
not the question I asked you.
And this is directly what I'm saying. I cannot do that. I can't. I don't know that they have a gun.
But are you saying
that
you
does
walk
not
in,
justify knowing what people fail to realize.
it
doesn't justify the profiling of being able to take somebody and saying I'm going to abuse their constitutional rights.
I agree.
Because I feel like they may have.
Because
you know what?
That was my
the whole
children,
problem is understand what we're saying. They are doing stop and frisk.
We know
they are doing 600,000 stop and they're not finding any guns. So the problem you say is, homeboy may be walking around sagging. That's what we use to talk about their thing. But he don't have a gun. Okay. So this is what the issue is. You cannot make an assumption because we're dealing with the situation where we're in this aftermath, where our heart is hard today because these people lost their life going to a movie. This man came to do damage.
What is the solution, Steve?
Here's the issue. We have to go into the idea of what alternatives of this idea of war and drugs. That's what we're going to talk about next. Because why do we have these guns? Basically, you pointed out, it's kind of out of the idea of we've got turfs. And these turfs around urban economies. Urban economies, drug transactions.
Yes.
The issue is, what are we going to do to take that out of the urban area and replace it, or we need to manage it? Good issue. Are we going Are we going straight into this?
I
think we should.
Okay, now we go straight into it. Do you know what I have to say?
Of course.
Do you know what I say? Decriminalize, as you want to say, decriminalize drugs, aka legalize all drugs.
That's true.
Let's stop it.
Okay.
We have a war on drugs that we lost. You know when we lost that? Ronald Reagan, George Bush decided this in what, 84?
84.
It didn't work. It's going on 40 years.
That didn't work.
Damn near 40 years of legalizing drugs. Do you want to know what you have? 40 million people locked up.
Right.
Drug game still flourishing.
That's true.
Crime in our neighborhoods is still going.
That's true.
On the spot, we'll call for, and we're going to tweet this today. Okay. Today is what, July 21st? We're going to tweet it. We're going to flood the message. We're going to let everybody know.
A new alternative?
A new alternative. Let's legalize the drugs.
Okay. Well, I think you have to be clear, and we're going to talk about...
Want to talk about why?
Why?
Because if you take the drugs away from the drug dealers...
Right.
And put it in the state's hand, like the methadone is done that way. If you put it in the state's hand, and you let the state dispense it, you take the crime off the street from Tamel and every other name is out there killing each other, shooting each other for drug turf, whether New York, LA, Compton, wherever you want to, Philadelphia, Chicago, of course. The half of this here stuff that going in our community is drug crime.
Okay.
Is a drug beef. In Portugal, in 2009 Time magazine article, Drugs in Portugal, did decriminalization work?
It worked. They have 10 years of statistics
Yes.
looking at the change in drug use, drug management. It even has an effect because the heroin addicts of HIV transactions or infections going down.
Everything is going down.
There's a huge amount of issues in reference to a number of things. So I think there's a real issue that you have there, and this is what you want to say on the spot is going to be dealing with this in the next shows.
We're not this shows, but we're going to continue
because the gun violence we're constantly dealing with.
We got to talk about it. People of color, we can no longer allow our legislative people, and usually legislative people from other ethnic groups, to tell us what's going on in our community and why it's not working. The bottom line is, for all the years of the war on drugs, it hasn't worked yet.
So we have something different. There's a new public policy that must be established.
Yes.
So we've washed out the war on drugs. This idea of what's going to be the alternative. So we've got to look, on the spot's got to look at 3 or 4 different scenarios, because the public policy issue is going to be huge. Mm-hmm. It's going to be huge because everybody's coming to there's an organization that you pointed out, Law Enforcement Against
Prohibition.
Yes. What is their standpoint? These are law enforcement.
Law enforcement.
What do they say?
That we're too much resources to being paid for drug crimes. We have to legalize it, and you control it better. The same thing that I'm saying.
Right.
You can control it better. Once you take it out at the hands of the criminals,
right,
the guys on the street that's fighting each other, you can put it in the health clinics and then say, hey, guess what? This is what we're going to do. We're going to give you your drugs, but you got to sit here for 2 hours and listen to alternative to drug use.
So we really get to be able to say rehabilitation.
Yes, we'll also say, guess what?
What?
You got to see the doctor.
Okay.
We'll give you treatment. We can monitor this. We can do it better. The name of the game is in prohibition. We had a lot of violence.
Of course.
And guess what? How did they stop it? They legalized alcohol.
Once
alcohol was legalized, the violence stopped.
Right.
Once the violence stopped, it's over with.
Okay.
So it's going to be a problem, but here's the difference. We tried the other way. It didn't work.
Right.
Other countries are doing it.
Okay.
Let's give a shot. Let's take a fair shot. Let's do 5 years. Legalize drugs. I'm telling you, there's a lot of elected officials that don't want to see it done because they get money from the gun lobby, from the prisons that's being built on the back of all the crime that we can commit.
Big issue. All right.
That's the difference. We need to out them and say, look, these people get money off of private prisons, which is American Express is part of that companies that donate for private prisons. Right. They make a lot of money off of this.
Okay.
In Arizona, when they wanted to lock up the illegal immigrants, we had topics on this. People wanted to talk about it. Guess what was behind all of it? They were getting $11 million a month. Wow. The same elected officials that were saying, let's lock more illegal immigrants up.
Right.
There's motives behind it. What is the motive for our community? We have to stand up and say, let's try something different, because the old people are getting killed. The young people are getting killed.
Right.
It's not working what we're doing. Let's try something different.
Okay.
Legalize it, put it in the hand of the state, let them dispense it. It really don't cost, the cost of drugs, the real issue is trying to sneak it across the border. Right. Mexico is killing each other. Guess what?
That's our next show.
There'll never be.
We're going to talk about the connection from Mexico. We got to wrap up, so we'll come back with some new stuff.
We'll be back. We're back. Steven Thompson. Trayvon Martin is the next subject.
It continues, as they say, the beat goes on. In the Trayvon Martin situation, recently, George Zimmerman, he made bail, and he came out, he gave an exclusive interview.
Made bail again.
Made bail again. This is the second time around. And he gave Sean Hannity of Fox News Network an exclusive.
Fox Entertainment.
Yes. You say, some people say faux network. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that means, but what happens is Sean Hannity had the get, so to speak. He got the exclusive because he's been consistently supportive of this whole situation with George.
And he should go to somebody who feels supportive.
So George made the interview. One of the highlights of the interview is basically he said, quote unquote, "I feel that it was all God's plan." Now, that set it off. Essentially, he had brought in a spiritual dimension to say this is just something that's almost divine.
Like God wanted you to shoot.
Yeah.
That's how the family have taken.
So, yeah, the guy he obviously offered a quote-unquote apology to the family in reference to this interview, and the family definitely rejected it because it was pointed out that there was no reason for the gentleman to leave his car after he was informed to basically stand down.
It would have been nice. It would have been a lot simpler if
Well,
you
we'd have
identified
the total change. It would have been outside. But
You know,
in
did you
this
hear what I
case-
said to you?
Of course.
Had he identified himself,
Right.
who he was, would have helped a great difference.
It would have
I'm
been.
security of the neighborhood.
Right.
And this is why I'm trying to figure out what you're doing.
Right. But here's another issue that most people point out is those individuals are not told to carry a weapon.
No. And wait. Bear in mind,
Right.
outside of my office, the
Right.
sign says what?
You are at the jail.
No. Outside the office of the studio. I'm
Studio,
sorry.
right.
Graham Security.
Graham Security.
So
right.
I've had a security firm.
Sure.
No, if you're going to have a firearm,
Right.
that's a whole different
situation.
thing here
Right.
because that's a whole different insurance thing.
Right.
So
This is a situation.
carrying a firearm was not part of your
Oh, yeah.
job description.
Well, that's the whole issue. Unfortunately, let's go into a little deeper. As this started to evolve, there was arrangement with this interview with Sean Hannity, and then afterwards, he wanted to, as his lawyer also wanted to have an interview with Barbara Walters, the legendary Emmy-winning journalist.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Barbara Walters went down, obviously, producers, cameras to have this interview, and lo and behold, he nixed it. So you know Barbara was pretty upset. She has an outlet called The View.
Yes.
The next day, she went on The View and talked about it. Basically, it came down to she did not indicate that he asked for money, but what came out subsequently is that he wanted a month where he wanted his family
Protected.
put up in a hotel, protected, because from what people say, the money's going. The law firm, basically this fund to help him is down to almost nothing.
Well, you can't keep paying your bills and everything else eventually.
It's a very, very difficult situation. I mean, law firms and lawyers cost a lot of money.
Yes.
And this is what we call a high-profile case.
Yes. And
So-
you're going to pay.
And so Barbara Walters was extremely upset with him because you can't promise
Person
authorized
of that status.
Well, yes, and then tell them to come down with the full, crew, and then cancel the thing. So subsequently on The View, he called in, and Barbara said, "Listen, too short. I don't have enough time." He called in at the end of the show, so much
course.
like maybe 10, 15 minutes.
They
He's
said,
like,
let's do it tomorrow, if I'm not
No.
mistaken.
She's like, no. She nixed it. So one of the things that comes out of this is two things they're doing. The prosecutors indicated that they're going to use the interview as evidence because there are inconsistencies in his statement into Sean Hannity, and he doesn't realize that this is admissible in court.
He realized.
Well, the problem is,
They just-
too,
the attorneys
the
should have been
lawyer,
standing next to him.
if he gave him the okay to do that, then you really have to stay on a particular story if that's the story. So you got a problem. So is that going to be a problem in court? Two, there's all these different issues with him, and he's not coming out in a public sense to looking pretty interesting. He's coming out looking kind of wacky.
Well, the more he talks,
Mhm.
the more it comes out.
Well, it's a very interesting situation.
And
we'll continue to talk about this case.
don't know where he'll try to do his next interview and what will he try to shake the people down, because it's very difficult that he's working. He can't work.
Nope.
He can't be in the public
He's in
eye.
hiding here.
And he has a problem.
Right. Not only him, his wife was convicted because she lied.
Perjury,
This
yes.
is true. So we got a problem with the family.
We'll be back. The Trayvon Martin saga will continue.
And we will be the empowered intelligence in reference to all of the issues today.
Without a doubt. Thanks, Steve, for another great show. Our audience, we thank you. You can find us on otsnetworks.com.
And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest.
This is On the Spot.